Tashdalita everyone, and welcome to the grammar class. Today we're going to discuss, though it's a grammar class, today we're going to discuss a rather interesting concept that is of the negation. We're going to look at this very topic and through two perspectives. One, through the perspective of grammar, in which we're not going to delve in deep. Rather, we'll just introduce the concept and then we will discuss it later during a different text. So, but the other perspective is through the perspective of fundamental epistemology. We'll discuss it a bit with examples and everything. So today's class will be just understanding what is negation. When we talk about negation in Tibetan, what do we actually mean by negation, both through the perspective of grammar and then the perspective of fundamental epistemology. So before we get to the actual lesson, let me begin with the verse. So first we have the line of worship. So today we are dedicating this class to the Great Mother Saraswati. So this is the line of worship, and then it is followed by the verse of worship here. So let me read this verse, and then afterwards we'll go to the translation of this, and then we'll begin today's lesson. Laso Yumchemo sherab drumela chatelo. Yumchemo sherab drumela chatelo. Yumchemo sherab drumela chatelo. Shunam tamchi mingzamle. Mingi rave tunam du. Jishi mingzam maina ngorani letru bow. Let me repeat this again. Shunam tamchi mingzamle. Mingi rave tunam du. Jishi mingzam maina ngorani letru bow. So what does that mean? So the first line, which is the line of worship, says, I prostrate to you, O Great Mother, the wisdom lamp, which the wisdom lamp is a symbolism of the great wisdom, the female incarnate of wisdom, Mother Saraswati. And we have used the word great here, great because of the non-conceptual wisdom that is within the Great Mother Saraswati. So therefore, we use great. Now, the verse, it means entire phenomena are merely by the name. All functions and definitions are within the boundary of name. If what that is not merely by the name, then its nature arises intrinsically from itself. So this is the meaning of the verse. It says that everything that we know as existence is merely by the imputation of the name. And then we see that a table is able to function as a table. A vase is able to function as a vase. A fire is able to function as a fire. All those functions and definitions are also within the boundary of the name. And if there is a phenomena which is not merely by the name, then that very phenomena is not has a nature that arises intrinsically from itself, meaning that that phenomena is not empty of intrinsic nature, that it is absolutely existing. Okay, so with this verse, let us begin today's class. The concept when it comes to the fundamental epistemology is not that difficult, but definitely takes time to get used to it. So analyzing the negation from the perspective of fundamental epistemology and science of grammar. So this is what we're going to do. The later part we're going to do The later part we're not going to delve too much into because it's a part of an entire different text. So we will keep that. We'll keep that for that particular class. But but getting a little bit into the perspective of negation through the fundamental epistemology is something that will not do any harm to us. So let us talk a little bit about it. The definitions, definitely there are different scholars who have different definitions regarding the negation. So the definitions that I have written here is from the fundamental epistemology by Yangchen, Pubachok, so Yangchen Dudra. So Dudra, which is the fundamental epistemology, the understanding and the very foundation of the understanding of the pramana or the epistemology. So now we're going to start understanding the perspective of negation in terms of the fundamental epistemology. So from the Yangchen Dudra, the fundamental epistemology of Yangchen, the definition of which is perceived through direct cutting of the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So, as you can see here, the definition states that it's the cutting or the direct cutting of the object of negation. So it's a sort of phenomenon which can only be perceived when the object of negation is directly cut by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So providing the example. So this is the definition. It says that it's a phenomena that can only be perceived in this manner, that it's not a phenomena that we're talking about, which talks about existence of something. It talks about the negation of something. And since we know what is negation, so it is a phenomena that can only exist through the direct cutting of the object of negation. So it's only by the process of cutting the object of negation that one can perceive the negation. And there's so this is something that is different from existing phenomena or yes. So note, it should be understood as a phenomena that is perceived through the direct cutting of the phenomena that is the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So it is better. It's always, when it comes to fundamental epistemology, it's always easier when we understand the definitions through examples. So for example, if we say not a vase, so in Tibetan we'll say Pumba Yimba Le Lokpa, which means the negation of the existing of vase or not a vase. Is a case in which the negation of the object of negation, here the object of negation is the existence of the vase. So by stating the statement, what we are saying is that we are negating the existence of the vase. So the negation of the existence of vase can only be perceived to the direct cutting of the vase by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So saying that there is a vase is a direct contradiction to saying not a vase. So the negation only functions when that very perception that the mind does that there is a vase becomes not a vase by directly cutting the existence of vase. So once the conceptual consciousness apprehending, in this case the vase, apprehends and directly cuts the existence of vase, then only we perceive that there is no vase, that there is not a vase. Otherwise, whatever phenomena that is perceived cannot be understood as not a vase. Only when we directly cut through or we directly cut the object of negation, that is vase, which is done by the conceptual consciousness, that we can state that not a vase. So therefore, unlike saying it is a vase, when we say not a vase, we talk about negation, and therefore it is important to perceive it only through the process that is directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness. So moreover, we have example like we have non-self and non-object, in which the object of negation would be the existence of self. In this case, it will be existence of self, which is which has an innate nature or intrinsically existing self, absolutely existing self. So the direct cutting of the absolutely existing self leads to the negation of that absolutely existing self, thus perceiving the non-self. Non-object, which is also the permanent phenomena. So by directly cutting the existence of an object, a compound phenomena, an object, an impermanent phenomena, one can perceive the non-object. And one certain example is the sky, the non-compound sky or space, which is the negation of tangibility or contact. So just by directly cutting the tangibility, one can perceive the non-compound space. It is not perceivable by any other means. So negations are those phenomena which can only be perceived through this process. And the process tells you to negate, to directly cut the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness. And only through this process, if you go through this process, and then if you can establish a phenomena, then that phenomena will become the negation. So this is by the definition, and we have 3 examples provided here. So this is the general understanding, the general definition of negation in terms of the fundamental epistemology. It states that when we talk about negation in terms of epistemology, it is a phenomena that is apprehended or that is perceived only after directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness. That this is the criteria that should be met for something to be a negation. So, but then when we state a negation, so this let us discuss this later. So let us skip this for now. So therefore, we understand that the definition of negation is a phenomena which is perceived through direct cutting of the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So this is the process how you perceive the negation in terms of fundamental epistemology. It is very important that a word can have a certain meaning in terms of epistemology, can have a different meaning in terms of grammar, and then could also have a different meaning as a usage in the worldly dialect, or we call it the colloquial. So there could be a degree. There could be a certain degree of a difference between the comprehension of this very same concept of a thing. So therefore, negation in terms of fundamental epistemology will not be same as the negation in terms of science of grammar. And this we will discuss here after this. But in terms of fundamental epistemology, we understood that negation is a phenomenon which is perceived through the direct cutting of the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness comprehending it. And this is the definition. And the example given was not a vase. So not a vase is a negation of a vase. And it is a negation of a vase because not a vase is only perceived when the object of negation, that is the vase, is being directly cut by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So here the object of negation is the vase, and the perceived phenomenon, the negation, is not a vase. So not a vase can only be perceived once you directly cut through the existence of the vase. So therefore, it's also important to understand what is a vase, to understand the negation of the vase. So first, one must understand what is a vase, what is the function of vase, what can be defined as a vase, if it exists. And then, through that very understanding, one can directly cut that perception. Each and every concept that was related to the existence of vase can be reversed. And then, directly cutting through those concepts, those understanding, one can come to the negation of the vase. Now one can say not a vase. Why? Because let's say one of the function of the vase is to hold water. Now there is nothing that holds the water. Not a vase cannot hold water. Not a vase cannot function as a vase. So therefore, understanding the object of negation is the first step towards the negation of the object. Similarly, when we say non-self, it is very important to understand that because the object of negation is the absolute self, one should understand what is an absolute self. Only after understanding what is an absolute self, one can cut through and then perceive the concept of non-self. Similarly, non-object, one should understand what is an object, what is the function of the object, what is the definition of the object, how would one establish the existence of an object. And then afterwards, one can go through the process of negating it by directly cutting it by the conceptual consciousness to come to the negation of that very object of negation. So therefore, it's also important to understand the object of a negation to negate the object. Without perceiving the object of negation, it is not possible to reach to the negation of the object. So non-self can only be understood if one is thoroughly understanding what is an absolute self. There were Tibetan scholars who would say that inquiring on the concept of what is an absolute self is a waste of time because absolute self does not exist. But the problem is that knowing that it does not exist, one should know that what is that which does not exist. So therefore, there are arguments like this that some of the earlier scholars, Tibetan scholars, have made. And definitely there are many Tibetan scholars who are quite against the concept of practicing the epistemology, because they say that it only makes someone better in debates and not in the actual practice. But then we know that understanding things thoroughly, we must know the concepts of the fundamental epistemology to analyze them. For example, here, the concept of non-self could only be understood by the negation of absolute self. So not understanding the concept of negation will prevent us from understanding the non-self or non-object. Okay, so this is the introduction to the perception of negation in terms of the fundamental epistemology, a definition by Yangchen in his book on the fundamental epistemology. Now here we have the book of the Armor of Speech, the text, the Armor of Speech by Smriti Gyana Kirti. And in his book, he talks about negation. And he states that negation is for the reversal of all. All here means, here the all should be understood as the negation, should be understood as the object of negation. Here the object of negation and the object of negation in epistemology should be perceived quite differently, not the same. Here negation is merely negation in terms of it could be an action, it could be an existence of things. It could be negation of a characteristic, like we have already discussed in the previous classes. In the previous class, when we talk about the negation in the tree of excellent speech. So here the object of negation is either a noun, a verb, or it's a descriptive word. And therefore, it says that negation is used for reversal of all, which means that it is used for reversal of all the objects of negation. For example, if I would say yakpo, yakpo means good. And then if you'd say yakpo me, which is the reverse of yakpo, which means not good. So therefore, negation, here when we talk about negation, we're talking about the particles of negation. In the previous, when we talk about negation, we're talking about the concept of negation. So understand that it may seem, all the terms may seem exactly the same, but they refer to different things. In the science of grammar, we don't talk much about the negation in terms of the fundamental epistemology. We don't talk about negation of phenomena, negation as phenomenon. We simply say it's a particle that is used to depict or show the reversal of all the object of negation. And object of negation here is very different from the object of negation in terms of epistemology. Here, when we say object of negation, we simply say that it's the reversal of whatever meaning it's trying to convey. For example, the descriptive word yakpo. Yakpo me, just reverse the description of yakpo. All right, and then we have, for example, top me. Top, which means strength. Top me is the negation of possessing strength. So it means not possessing strength. Ju ye, which means possessing wealth. Ju me, which means not possessing wealth. So as you see that it's simply a reversal of all the object of negation. And object of negation is a meaning or a statement that is depicting a particular meaning. And then to reverse that very meaning is known as negation. So therefore, according to Amor's speech, it states that negation is for the reversal of all, and all should be understood as object of negation. And negation should be understood as particle of negations, the negative particles. It should be understood as negative particles that we have studied. We know that there are 4 negative particles, ma, mi, min, me. And these 4 particles should be understood as negation here in this sentence. It should be understood as ma, mi, min, me. And all should be understood as object of negation. So it should be understood as negation of the object of negation. So negation should be understood as a reversal. It should be understood as the particle that reverses the meaning. An object of negation should be understood as a statement that is providing a certain meaning. And so reversing that meaning is the function of these 4 particles. So now you see, even though the terms are same, just because we have shifted our perception, just because we have shifted the subject of our perception, the meanings change drastically. For example, the term not human, mi, me, is a statement that shows the negation of the object of negation that is human. So it's saying that me means there is a human. Me may is the reversal of that statement, which says there is no human. Moreover, examples such as boundless. Say may boundless, which means that there is no boundary, or something cannot be bounded within a particular perimeter. Not tashi means that it only tells us that this person is not tashi. So in the understanding of meaning, we may see that it also has similar meaning to that of the understanding in the epistemology. Definitely, it should have. Otherwise, the epistemology also depends on the language. But it's the way we perceive it. We don't, when we say boundless here, we don't analyze in terms of the negation of boundary. We just say that there is a statement that says boundary. Okay, now boundless is just a reversal of it, saying that it no longer has boundary. That's it. We analyze it in terms of reversal of the statement. Not tashi can be understood as the negation of tashi, that is saying that the directly cutting the object of negation tashi. Definitely, it could be understood in this way. But since we are perceiving it in terms of grammar, we don't analyze it in this way. We just say not tashi is the reversal of the statement saying is tashi. So it's just a reversal. And we're using and here we're using a particle. Tashi min. So we are using particle min here. So by the usage of the particle min, we understood that this is the reversal of the statement that is tashi hin, which is tashi. And the reversal would be tashi min, is not tashi or not tashi. So even though everything may seem similar, it's just the process of analyzing. When it comes to grammar, we don't analyze things in the way that we analyze during the fundamental epistemology. And similarly, when it comes to fundamental epistemology, it is not important to focus on the particles and all. It's the very meaning of the negation. So therefore, we see that the way we analyze it changes from epistemology to grammar. Okay, so these two are general introduction, definition of negation through the perspective of epistemology, through the perspective of science of grammar. Okay, so now we go back to the epistemology part. So there are two types of negation: affirming negation, non-affirming negation. So these are two types of negation in terms of the fundamental epistemology. So non-affirming negation definition: not implying directly or indirectly the existence of any phenomenon as a remains after directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. Okay, so the definition states that once the object of negation is being directly cut by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it, there is no other phenomena it is suggesting or implying, whether it is directly or indirectly existing. It is simply saying that this is not it, this is not this. That is the function of non-affirming negation. And after saying that it does not, this is the negation of this, it is neither directly or nor indirectly implying that, oh, since this is not this, this is that. No, there is no implication that any other phenomena exists by the negation of this particular object of negation. So you simply negate this object of negation, and once it is done, what that is perceived as just the negation of the object, and through it there is no implication directly or indirectly that something else is existing as a remains. So, for example, we have the non-compound space. The non-compound space, which is just the negation of tangible. So something that is tangible, something that can be that can come in contact, or we can feel the contact of something. So it's simply the negation of that contact, or and doesn't directly or indirectly imply the existence of any other phenomena as a remains. So it just says that this is the space, non-compound space. It is void of any tangibility. There is no tangible things here. And simply negating the object of negation, that is tangible things. There is no tangible things here. And it simply negates the tangible things. And after negating it, there is no other phenomena that is directly or indirectly implied by this understanding. It just says it is non-compound space. It is negation of tangible. So there is no tangible here. That's it. It is not suggesting that, oh, since it is negation of tangible, so there should be something there. There is like a non-tangible thing that is existing there. No, it is not implying that. It's simply saying that it is negation of tangible. And negation of tangible is known as non-compound space. And as we see, most of the non-affirming negations are permanent phenomena because of that particular reason. So moreover, we have negation of non-self, which is also an example of non-affirming negation, by analyzing the absolute self and then saying that, directly cutting the absolute self as an object of negation, whatever remains is the negation of the negation. So here it's negation of non-self, but negation of the self. For example, negation of non-self means that existence of absolute self, because there is double negation here. So negation of non-self means the object of negation is non-self, which is the negation of the absolute self. So it's the negation of the absolute self. Since it's the negation of the absolute self, it is the absolute self. That which is not it is it, as we understand this. For example, let's say that which is not was is was. So similarly, that which is negation of not a was is the was, because we negate it twice. So what we do is that we take the object of negation as not self, non-self, and then we negate it by directly cutting it through the conceptual consciousness. And then what we get from it is absolute self, because it's the negation of non-self. And non-self itself is the negation of the absolute self. So if we simply have negation non-self, then we understand that, oh, non-self itself is a negation of absolute self, because because it's a phenomenon that is why. So we say, oh, is non-self a negation? Yes. Why is it a negation? Because it's a phenomena that is perceived after the object of negation is directly cut through by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. And since it is a phenomena that can be perceived after directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it, therefore it is a negation. Now we say, in that case, is negation of non-self a negation? Yes, it is negation. Why is it? Because it is also a phenomena that can be comprehended after directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So both of these are negation. But now, like I was talking, okay, so let us discuss this after the affirming negation. So therefore, this is the non-affirming negation. So the characteristic that that defines a non-affirming negation is that it is simply negation. There is no phenomena that is either directly or indirectly implied to be existing after the negation of the object of negation. So there is no phenomenon that is either directly or indirectly implied to exist. So it's simply negation of something. That's it. So the example was the non-compound space. Now, affirming negation. Definition: implying directly or indirectly the existence of some phenomena as a remains after directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So here, the defining characteristic is that after the negation, there is an implication, either directly or indirectly, that some phenomena is there, which can be provided there, that which can be affirmed as existing. So, for example, taking the premise that Tashi doesn't consume meal after noon. So the statement says Tashi doesn't consume meals after noon. This statement not only negates the object of negation that Tashi consumes meals after noon, but also implies that Tashi consumes food before noon. Because it is logical to understand that Tashi must consume meal or food to sustain. So if the statement tells us that Tashi doesn't consume food after noon, then by the logic, what happens is that, and therefore this is the understanding of affirming negation. Here we have not only negated the Tashi consumes meal afternoon. So once it's afternoon, Tashi no longer consumes any food. We have not only negated that, but upon negation, we have also affirmed that Tashi consumes food before noon. So this type of negation should be understood as affirming negation, because not only does it negate a particular object of negation, but upon negation of the object of negation by directly cutting it by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it, it also directly or indirectly implies that there is another phenomena, that is Tashi consumes food before noon. So this type of negation, you can definitely see the contrast. In the non-affirming negation, simply negation, no implication of existence of any other phenomena as remains. Affirming negation, there is negation. Upon negation, directly or indirectly implying that existence of some phenomena as remains. Example of non-affirming negation, non-compound space. It's the negation of tangible, and there is no other phenomena that is either directly or indirectly implied existing as a remains. Example of affirming negation, Tashi doesn't consume meals after noon. Upon the negation of Tashi consumes meals after noon, it also implies that Tashi consumes food before noon. Okay, consider the premise that there is a table and a chair in the room. Now, when stated that there is no table in the room, when we say there is no table in the room, what we do is that we negate the existence of table. We negate the existence of table in the room. So the negation, the object of negation is table in the room. So we negate the table in the room, but not only do we negate the object of negation, that is the table in the room, but upon that we also imply that now there is, but we also imply that there is chair in the room. Because the premise was that we understood that there was either table or chair. It was because of our ignorance, of not knowing what is there inside. We don't know whether it's a table or the chair. But now after the negation of the existence of table, it affirms that there is chair in the room. So you see the difference between the negation, the affirming and the non-affirming negation. Yes. And there could be some things which can be understood as an example, which could be given as a phenomenon that is an instance of a negation, but that object itself may not be negation at all, because we know that if it's a negation, it should only be perceived after directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. So let's say a table is not a vase, right? Table is not a vase. But is table a negation? No. But is table not a vase? True. Is not a vase a negation? Yes. But if it's not a vase, then should it be? If it's not a vase, it's a negation. True. But just because it is not a vase, does it mean that it should always be a negation? False. Because we have table. Table is not a vase, but table is also not a negation. It's a phenomena that is not a negation, because to perceive a table, we need not, because whenever we look and we see, oh, there is a table, we don't have to go in our brain and proceed that, oh, this is not a vase, this is not a book, this is not a sky, this is not a wall, this is not a house. And then after a painless infinite object that we have negated, we come to understanding that, oh, this is table. No, this is not how we perceive a table. When we look at table, our conceptual consciousness that directly perceives the table says this is a table, and we needn't go through the process of negating something to perceive table. So therefore now we understand, if is table not a vase? Yes, table is not a vase. Is not a vase negation? Yes, not a vase is negation. If we go through that logic, then is table not table a negation? No, table is not a negation. Why is table not a negation? Table is not a negation because to perceive a table, we need not perceive it after directly cutting every other object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending the table, to come to the point that this is a table. So therefore, it is not a negation. So therefore, if it is not a vase, it need not always be a negation. But the very statement, not a vase, is it the statement not a vase, is it a negation? Yes, it is a negation. So you see because the problem is that if table becomes a negation, then it should go through that similar process to be perceived, which is not the case. So therefore, we see a great contradiction between these two logic. And since these two logic are contradictory, so we cannot say that table is a negation. So table is not a vase, but table is not a negation. Not a vase is a negation, right? And then if we say, if it's not a vase, then is it table every time? No, that's not the case. If it's not a vase, it's all the other phenomena that is not a vase. Does not imply that it's a table. But does table count as one of those phenomena that is not a vase? Yes, it is one of those phenomena which is not a vase, but it is not negations. Similarly, all those other phenomena which is not a vase, that can be perceived directly by the as the phenomena. Like definitely a mountain is not a vase, so mountain is also not a vase, but it's not a negation. So therefore, understanding what is negation is to understand how we perceive it, and we perceive it only after we only perceive it by the definition. We perceive it only after directly cutting the object of negation by the conceptual consciousness apprehending it. And if we don't go through that process to establish something, then that phenomena is not a negation. Though it could be given as an example of negation of something, it is not negation. So therefore, this is something that I was thinking, because it's a common mistake that many could make when understanding the negation. Because simply because something being an instance of negation of something doesn't make it negation. And you see why the logics are contradictory here. So that is the case. And then, like I said, double negation is affirming. So negation of not a vase, negation of not a vase is the vase. So therefore, we see that there is double negation here. Because first, what we do is that the first negation, which is not a vase, takes the object of negation as vase, whereas the second negation takes the object of negation as not a vase. So it confirms the vase over there. So not a vase is a vase. Okay, so this is the understanding of negation in terms of epistemology. And those of you who are currently, if some of you who are studying the fundamental epistemology, and if you're on this point, then definitely you will learn this in more greater depth than what I have spoken. I have just touched the surface today, though in terms of grammar it will be even more surface. So, for example, the book is not a. So, for example, if you say the book is not a permanent phenomena, the object of negation is book as a permanent phenomena, and affirming is book as a impermanent phenomena, because impermanent phenomena is the negation of permanent phenomena. This is affirming negation here. Whereas emptiness is the object of negation is intrinsic nature of phenomena. So when we cut this, there is nothing affirming. It's just the negation of the intrinsic nature of phenomena. So this is non-affirming a negation. Lasso. So now let us go to the classification of the negation, which is the negative particles in terms of grammar. So from the Armor of Speech, it states there are 14 negations with the particle mayin, classified on the basis of definition. There are 11 negations with the particle me, classified based on time and place, not on the basis of definition. So these are, in total, there are 14 negations of the particle mai and 11 negation of the particle me. Mai could be mi, min, mi, min, ma, mi, min, ma, mi, min. We have the first three particle ma, mi, min. All these three can be understood as particle of mayin, and me has just one particle, which is particle of me. That is it. So therefore, the usage of the particle of mayin can be in 14 different negations, whereas the usage of the particle me can be in 11 different negations. We're not going to talk about these negations in today's class because we will talk in depth about these while further studying the grammar. In the next text. Now we have already reached to our final particle here. Now we only have alternative particles, and then finally we have punctuations, and that's it. And then we'll be done with the tree of excellent speech. After that, we're going to study the same, which is the 30, but now with a more broader text. So we'll probably study the text which is the oral instruction on grammatical science by Situ Rinpoche to Dharmapata, known as Situ Shalung. So after this, we will go through either with that, or we will study the text on the gender science, the commentary on the gender science. So everything will be decided later. But in any case, now when it comes to the independent particles, we are done here. This is the final independent particles. The reason why I took this class to speak in a little bit detail about the negation is to give an understanding how the language works, because you must understand that these things play a great role in how people think and how people speak in their day-to-day life, and how grammar can be used. And the other thing is that you can also imply this, you can also apply this particular understanding while you're reading a text in Tibetan language to further understand it in a greater depth. The thing is that definitely if you read a text, you will understand a certain thing about it. But once you polish your grammatical understanding of the language, the text itself will manifest in a different way. You will see things that you weren't able to understand before in a greater depth, in a different perspective. It will almost be like you're reading a new text rather than repeating the same one. And this will also happen with Tree of Excellent Speech. If you repeatedly listen to the lessons and then you go back to the text, once you have the entire text memorized and you can connect all the meanings that are described in the class with the very text, then you understand the text in a greater and in-depth understanding. And the more commentary that you will learn, the better you will understand the 30. Like you see, 30 will be the center. It would be like the main, for example, it could be like the ocean. And then many different rivers and tributaries submit in that ocean. So therefore, the more commentaries you learn, the richer will be your ocean at the end. So here, in this particular line, the only thing I want to clarify is that there are 14 negations with the particle of main, which is ma, mi, min, and then 11 negations with the particle of me, which is me. And this is from the Armor of Speech by Smriti Gyana Kirti. In Tibetan, we call it Mago Chuncha. And the commentary can also be found of this particular text. Very profound text, a very great scholar indeed, Smriti Gyana Kirti, and a very great contributor towards the understanding of Tibetan grammatical system. Because, like I said, for me, I belong to the part of grammatical lineage that believes that Tibetan language is greatly influenced by the Panini grammarian system, and it has roots in the Indian Sanskrit grammatical system. Though there are others who may disagree, but definitely those are also their opinion. But as for me, as it concerns, for me, I belong to the lineage that believes that the particular Tibetan system of grammar is greatly influenced by the Panini grammarian system. Okay, so now we are done with today's lesson. We have discussed quite a lot about negations. Some interesting things also regarding negations, and we saw that the perspective are very different in terms of grammar as well as in terms of fundamental epistemology. So this is the negation. So before I read the final verse, first, do we have any questions regarding? Do we have any questions? Lasso, do we have anyone who wants to read the text portion? So you want me to give you the example, or let me provide that example later, because currently it's not coming directly to me. So I'll provide it later if that's not a problem. Affirming main, non-affirming me. Affirming is main ka. I'll write it here. Just take. I hope that I'm quite audible. Very sorry. The nose is a little blocked. So if my sound is quite different from the usual, then that is the culprit. Mainka Mega. Yes. So these are the two negations. Mainga is the affirming, mega is the non-affirming. That's so. So those who are studying it, if any one of you are studying this, I would like to recommend every one of you to pay close attention to this. This is going to be very important. This and the prasangik, the Telugu Rigpa, which in science and mathematics we call it proof by contradiction. So a very profound practice in philosophy also, as you can see. It is a very well-known practice in philosophy. So we also use this in Tibetan. We also use this in epistemology. We call it Telugu Rigpa, and this is also the basis of the prasangik madhyamika, proof by contradiction. So yeah, those who are studying the fundamental epistemology, I advise you to pay great attention on these things. Like I said, these are mostly logics, which will be later used to cut through the more difficult concept when you study the more profound understanding. For example, without the proof by contradiction, understanding the negation and the negation of self in terms of the prasangik madhyamika will become impossible. So mere imputation of name will just be mere imputation of name, and it won't go any deeper. So, and also the concept of affirming and non-affirming negation will play a very significant role in distinction of the conventional and the ultimate reality later when you study madhyamika and so on. Lasso, so do you have anyone who wants to read, who wants to recite? I don't know why I cannot get the... Yes, so do we have anyone who wants to recite today the Tree of Excellent Speech? Okay, so would you like to try without the mic? Okay, so it will be a very low voice. So does anyone else wants to try reading the text? Do we have anyone else who wants to read? In that case, so today, am I audible? I hope I'm audible to everyone. In that case, today I will be reading. I will read the entire text. As a sign of auspiciousness also. So, lasso. Okay. Lama tang kumbu chizu jambe yang la cha tselo om arabazana di sumju be ningbo le she jumbe wangbo Yangchen Drubpay Dorje ze namo guru manchu goshaya lama choda yen mepe jambe yang la kudune tumi lekshe sumjupe ningbo to du sheparcha yangi chawa selboru cheba iu eoshi seje kasu sumjungi kangatana pama rala sanam jinjuju tata sani yangjude tani nara lasumta sani kanga pamar top kata pama hangunju kongotono pomo rolo soto lerdude zosi de du je gyangcha tayo to da tameo shena mingteje tunjer sura rutu na la tu la de number doing the nami nishi tumba ta teni tsakap namla chu sasu khapa thata to ngata nama rala tu hada thame rata ru ikiki ying ngapu nami thuba de rata tenam sathar chengane nami sumba cherate jochu nama rala ki tabasa ki khanga ki hada thame yida yi kyangya hansum kendu te khata phasa thata kya ngana mara lathar yang hada thame hada yang te sumtha je te nara la sa thata te thade khanga phama thame namla sathe thop kamgam thanam phama mamra nam samtam chetu te jochu latu kap tang song ru yi yang ya na kangba mi kong we khe au ham ki khong tu sek me dang yo pa the shin yi ne le chung ka tu te chung la khangjar tu ri tyung ka ne mi tyun de tu la ne ra khona chu ke da ka yi phra te phelche ming ge thoma chu ni ni ka tam ne betra thang ni tu che gyum zen da chekap tam nga la chu ming ge thome the ta ni thanye thema tha pa ta nam ra shin chi ni la chu chi chi su kan chi da te shi te le ta ni shikde letter chila chi nye sita shin kela chi suni kansa kampyun lao naro yu me papa ma tabu trate kata na pama satan trata pa nga ra la thame la tata ye kyu wada ni chala pa ni cho wale mingte papa peche tra mani nge me kap tang che mami mi me kata te mami thoma mi me chu mani pargi serje la tsite shing so nga na ma hata ra la shena shik kata pata tata ta jingje jo chena chi sada mi se shema to shing shi shena to beng kya khaji len chi so mingi cha da manor che kyang ba phula ta ke gu ke ze do che la pang lu be ta ma min sam ta thun ri che da thun yu zo sik je kata ji she cha zo chi ta je lu pa ta sik je kan ta ni she to thun je sam mo zo ba ta liu cham su shi she ka ngai ma to yi she ba che me ten to shi to be che ge lo me ma thu shi thun ge tro bu yu so ve de she chen be wang ba di yang je tro be to je pen. Okay, so with this, I hope that everyone will be sooner than later start memorizing the text. It's a very beautiful text. It's not a very long text, and it has the entire understanding of the 30, which is the foundation of Tibetan grammar in it. So, lasso and lasso. So now we end today's class with this final words of wishing. And so, sempa kya che nam kharu, tsiki mongpa mebar shok, tundrup sangbo gelden la, ngagel semta chelwar shok. Let me repeat this. Sempa kya che nam kharu, tsiki mongpa mebar shok, tundrup sangbo gelden la, ngagel semta chelwar shok. Once more. Sempa kya che nam kharu, tsiki mongpa mebar shok, tundrup sangbo gelden la, ngagel semta chelwar shok. So what does it mean? It means, may there be no misconception of name on the vast sky of the mind. May there be no egocentric pride within the mind of blessed practitioners. So may all of you may I wish this upon every one of you, and may all of yours enthusiasm and interest in studying this particular language only expand with time, and that may all of you encounter great teachers who can also teach you greatly about these things. And as for the Smriti Gyanas text, what I'm planning to do is I'm planning to combine this with the next commentary. Next commentary will be even more detailed, but once you know this, the next commentary will be very much more easier. And then we'll add the Smriti Gyanas text with this. And then after understanding this, you will understand almost, when it comes to the 30, you have an understanding of almost everything that the 30 has to provide. And also, not only on the level of fundamental or basic understanding, but in a very thorough and very thorough and very great detail. But this will come later. So this is it for today, and thank you very much. And I hope that today's class was beneficial to you, as it was a very enjoyable and fun class to teach, and may all of us benefit from this. And I hope every one of you, afternoon or evening, wherever you are, I hope that you have a wonderful day. That's all. Tashitele, and I'll see you for the next grammar class. That's all.